Hi, my name is Jenna Alvarez. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a single mom to a boy named Ethan. He's 11, quiet, thoughtful, always had this big heart. The kind of kid who loves space documentaries and draws comic books in his spare time. For most of his childhood, Ethan was happy. He used to hum while brushing his teeth, leave sticky notes on the fridge with little doodles, and ask me to read beside him until he fell asleep. But about 2 months after he started 6th grade at Morningside Middle School, that changed. It started subtly. He'd come home tired. Quieter. I'd ask how school was, and he'd just say fine. He started spending more time in his room and avoided eye contact when I talked to him. At first, I chalked it up to puberty or the new school nerves, but then the signs got worse. One afternoon, I came home early from a client meeting. I work in HR at a dental clinic downtown, and we had a light day. When I walked into the house, Ethan didn't hear me come in. He was in the bathroom, trying to wash something off his sleeve. I peeked in and froze. His lip was cut. Faint, but visible. And he had a purple bruise just under his left eye, like someone had jabbed him there with a fist or an elbow. "Ethan," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be, "what happened to your face?" He flinched. Actually flinched. Then he straightened up fast and said, "I slipped. In the gym. On the bench." A bad lie. Ethan's always been a terrible liar. I asked again, gentler this time. "Honey, please. Tell me the truth." He hesitated, then lowered his head and whispered, "It was Chase." That was the first time I heard the name. Chase Collins. He's in my class. He's been doing stuff for a while. Him and a few other boys. I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. My heart was pounding, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "What kind of stuff, Ethan?" He didn't look at me when he answered. "They take my lunch. Push me around in the hall. Sometimes they call me names like loser or worm boy. Chase tripped me in the cafeteria last week and I spilled everything. Everyone laughed. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me?" He just shrugged. I didn't want to make it worse. Worse. He already had a bruise on his face. That night, I cried in my room after he went to sleep. Not loud sobs, just quiet, helpless tears. I felt like I'd failed him. I was supposed to protect him. And here he was, afraid, hurt, and alone at school, of all places. The next morning, I kept him home. Called in sick at work. I told the school he wasn't feeling well. Truthfully, I needed the day more than he did. Then I started digging. I looked up Morningside's bullying policy. I combed through their parent handbook. I read every line of the district's code of conduct. I found a section on harassment and intimidation with 3 vague sentences and an email address for reporting it. So I emailed. With photos. I sent a message to Vice Principal Harmon with pictures of Ethan's bruises and a summary of what he told me. I was polite. Direct. Professional. He replied 3 hours later with a copy-pasted statement about how the school takes bullying allegations seriously and how they'd investigate and monitor the situation. That was it. I was furious. But I kept my cool. Because something in me shifted that day. I wasn't just going to report this. I was going to end it. And Chase Collins. He had no idea who he was about to mess with. I walked into Morningside Middle School the next morning with Ethan's bruises still fresh in my mind and my hands clenched tighter than I realized. I had emailed the vice principal, Mr. Harmon, the day before, photos, descriptions, everything, but his vague reply told me exactly what kind of meeting I was about to have. I signed in at the front office, and a secretary led me to his office. He greeted me with a practiced smile, motioned for me to sit, and pulled out a thin yellow notepad. "Ms. Alvarez," he said, "I understand you're concerned about Ethan." Concerned? That word didn't even begin to cover it. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm. "He's been coming home with bruises, missing homework, and he's completely shut down emotionally. He's told me he's being bullied by a boy named Chase Collins." He nodded, scribbled something, then said, "We're aware of Chase. He's been mentioned a few times by other students too, but it's difficult to act without formal witness reports. These things are tricky at this age, kids exaggerate, and a lot of it can be chalked up to social adjustment. I stared at him. Social adjustment? I asked. So being shoved into lockers, having your lunch stolen, and being physically assaulted is just a phase now? He gave a diplomatic little chuckle. Of course not. But unless we observe the behavior directly or it's caught on camera, we can't enforce serious disciplinary action. We did have a counselor speak with Chase last week about an unrelated incident, so we're monitoring him closely. I took a deep breath. Ethan says this has been going on for weeks. Multiple kids are involved. He's afraid to come to school. Are you telling me you can't even notify the parents of the boy involved? We can't disclose details involving other students, he said smoothly. It's a privacy issue. There it was. The wall. The bureaucratic red tape schools wrap themselves in to avoid liability. It was like I was trying to get justice from a brick. I want a written record, I said firmly. I want this reported officially, logged, and acknowledged as a formal bullying incident under district policy. He blinked. I'll make a note of your request. A note isn't enough, Mr. Harmon. I want a formal investigation launched, and I want updates. You have a responsibility to protect my son. He nodded again, non-committal. Polished. I left the office with a fake promise and a deep, boiling rage. I sat in my car in the school parking lot for 15 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel, thinking about what kind of system could allow this to keep happening. Later that evening, Ethan came home looking hopeful. He said someone from the school talked to Chase. But he also said Chase laughed about it with his friends afterward, calling him a snitch and threatening to make him pay. That night, I didn't cry. I started a spreadsheet. Every date, every incident Ethan remembered. I took photos of his backpack, which now had a Sharpie drawing of a worm and the words "Squish Me" scrawled on the bottom. I filed another complaint, this time to the school district, CCing the school counselor, Mr. Harmon, and the principal. Days passed. No response. Meanwhile, the bullying got worse. One day, Ethan came home and told me he was locked inside the janitor's closet during lunch. A teacher found him nearly 20 minutes later. And do you want to guess what the school did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That was the day I decided I wasn't just fighting a kid named Chase. I was fighting a system designed to protect the wrong people. And if they weren't going to defend my son, I would make them regret it. After the janitor's closet incident, something in me snapped, but not in the loud, reactive way. I didn't scream. I didn't demand a meeting. Instead, I got methodical. You see, I work in HR. I know how systems work. I know how people hide behind procedure, and I also know how to use those same rules to expose them. So that night, I started digging deeper not just into Morningside's policies, but into the entire Portland School District's anti-bullying framework. I read every page of their Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. I highlighted every policy that had been violated, every guideline that stated bullying was grounds for disciplinary action, including expulsion. Then I found the goldmine, a district-level safe schools policy tucked into a public PDF, stating that a pattern of harassment or physical aggression involving multiple instances must be investigated formally and could lead to disciplinary removal if supported by evidence. I knew then what I had to do. I had to build a case, real evidence, from every angle, strong enough to force their hand. So I went back to the spreadsheet I had started. I added timestamps, physical evidence, photos, and Ethan's written accounts. I sat him down gently and asked him to write down everything he remembered, dates, places, names. He was hesitant at first. But I explained that this wasn't about revenge. It was about safety. His safety, and others. I even got permission from two parents I knew, Laura and Denise, whose kids were also being bullied by Chase, to include their stories. Their sons weren't physically harmed like Ethan, but they'd been called slurs, had their backpacks stolen, and one of them even pretended to be sick for weeks just to avoid school. Sound familiar? I added their emails and written accounts to my file. Then I filed a formal public records request for hallway camera footage during one of the incidents Ethan described, the cafeteria trip incident. Oregon law gives public school parents the right to request access to surveillance footage that involves their own children. It was a long shot, but I was polite, persistent, and documented everything. Within a week, I received grainy footage showing Ethan walking with his lunch tray, and someone tripping him from behind. The resolution was too poor to confirm it was Chase directly, but it was enough to show it wasn't an accident. I uploaded the video to a secured folder in the cloud. I labeled every document meticulously: dates, times, witnesses. I organized everything into a master file labeled Formal Complaint, Repeated Harassment Against Ethan Alvarez, Morningside, Ms. And then I did something else. Something small but powerful. I created a second version of the file, stripped of names. A template. Because I knew if they were doing this to Ethan and other kids, they were probably doing it to more. I called it the Parent Toolkit. It wasn't about just saving my son anymore. It was about making it impossible for the school to ignore this ever again. Because they had one more chance to do the right thing. And if they didn't, I would go over their heads, into the court of public opinion, and make it loud. At this point, I had documentation, witness statements, and video footage. But I knew that if I really wanted to hold this school accountable, and not just Chase, but the administrators who allowed him to keep getting away with it, I needed to make the case legally unignorable. So, I scheduled a consultation with a local education rights attorney named Samantha Hale. Her name came highly recommended by a parent from Ethan's old daycare. She'd spent over a decade dealing with public school disputes, especially around student safety and policy violations. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. I brought my binder, yes, a literal binder, color-coded, tabbed, and broken down by incident. Samantha flipped through it for 10 minutes in silence, then looked up and said, "This is more thorough than what most lawyers prepare. And it's not just compelling, it's damning." She explained that under Oregon law, and more importantly, under federal Title IX protections, schools are obligated to intervene in cases of gender-based or physical harassment that create a hostile learning environment. And if they fail to act after being formally notified, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I told her about Chase's father, Ben Collins, who, as it turns out, sat on the Morningside School Advisory Board. Samantha wasn't surprised. "That explains the stonewalling," she said. "But it also creates a conflict of interest. And trust me, the district doesn't want that on record." With her help, we prepared a formal grievance letter addressed to the school principal, vice principal, district superintendent, and school board. It included a detailed timeline of incidents, screenshots from surveillance footage, photographs of Ethan's injuries and damaged property, witness statements from other parents and students, direct citations of the school's own anti-bullying policies, federal legal references regarding neglect and hostile environments, a legal notice warning that further inaction would be escalated to the Oregon Department of Education and local media. We didn't threaten legal action. We outlined it, calmly and formally, as the next logical step. Before sending it, I did something else. I attached a clean, polished version of the Parent Toolkit, the one I had created based on Ethan's case, and shared it anonymously on a local parenting forum under the subject line, "If your child is being bullied in Portland schools, start here." Within 3 days, it had over 1,200 views. By the end of the week, 2 other moms reached out, asking if they could use the format for their own complaints. The school wasn't just facing my pressure anymore. They were about to feel it from every direction. And the best part? They had no idea it all started with a quiet woman who refused to scream because she didn't have to. The facts were screaming loud enough. The letter was sent on a Monday morning at exactly 8:01 a.m. By 8:45, I had a response from the school district's director of student safety and conduct, asking to discuss the matter privately. I declined the phone call. Politely. I told them I wanted everything in writing. No backroom negotiations. No deflections. This time, I wanted it on the record. That Friday, I received an invitation to attend the upcoming school board disciplinary hearing, not just a meeting, but a formal proceeding involving the school principal, the vice principal, and a small panel of board members. One of them? Ben Collins, Chase's father. But here's where it got interesting. Due to the conflict of interest we'd outlined in the grievance, Samantha, my attorney, formally requested that Ben Collins recuse himself from the hearing. He fought it, of course. But the district's general counsel agreed with us. He was barred from attending or influencing the outcome. Checkmate. I showed up at the hearing prepared. I wore a simple navy suit, brought 2 neatly organized folders, and had Samantha sit quietly beside me. I wasn't there to scream. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused. The panel started with the school's version of events. Mr. Harmon spoke in vague terms about ongoing monitoring and student behavioral concerns. It was a masterclass in dodging accountability. The principal looked visibly uncomfortable as he explained that Ethan's case lacked sufficient independent confirmation to warrant suspension at the time. Then they turned to me. I passed out printed copies of our report. The moment I dropped the grainy surveillance photo of Ethan being tripped, you could feel the shift in the room. But the real silence came when I played the short audio clip of Ethan describing how Chase locked him in a janitor's closet. His voice, small and scared, cut through the panel's legalese like a knife. I finished with the other parents' letters, and I spoke clearly. I'm not here to punish a child. I'm here because this school failed mine. And if you let this happen to one boy, quiet, gentle, smart, then you've failed others too. The difference is, I had the resources to fight back. What about the kids whose parents don't? There was no applause. No outrage. Just silence. Heavy, undeniable silence. The superintendent closed her folder and asked the final question. Do you believe this child poses a continued threat to the school environment? I looked her dead in the eye. Yes. And your own records prove it. 3 days later, I received the official email. Chase Collins, expelled. Effective immediately. It didn't say why. It didn't name me. But I knew. The boy who once shoved my son against lockers was now the one walking out in silence, carrying his things, reputation in shreds, and no way to hide from what he'd done. And his father. Well, he might still sit on the board, but now he knew what it felt like to be powerless. Exactly as he should. The official word came on a Wednesday afternoon. Chase Collins was expelled. The email from the district didn't go into detail. Just said he had been removed due to multiple violations of student conduct policy involving peer safety. But news like that doesn't stay quiet in a place like Morningside Middle School. By Friday morning, every parent on the PTA knew. By Monday, it was all over the district Facebook group. The whispers weren't just about Chase, they were about what had finally brought him down. A few of the comments were predictable. Isn't that Ben Collins's kid? I heard it was one of those quiet moms. The HR lady. Apparently she recorded everything. Took it to the board. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I didn't need to. But something strange started happening. 2 mothers I barely knew stopped me in the school parking lot to say thank you. A guidance counselor emailed me privately and said, I'm glad someone finally stood up. We've had our hands tied with that boy for years. Even Ethan's science teacher wrote a short note home, no names, just a quiet acknowledgement. Ethan seems lighter lately, more focused. He even raised his hand twice this week. I smiled when I read that. But the part that caught me most off guard was what happened with Ben Collins. A week after the expulsion, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a confrontation. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. It read, Ms. Alvarez. I disagree with how this was handled. I believe you used influence and fear to force a decision that should have stayed within the school. But I also admit that I never looked too closely at my son's behavior. Maybe I should have. For what it's worth, I hope your boy is okay. BC. I stared at it for a long time. No apology. No admission. But that final line, maybe I should have. That was the crack. The first break in a man who'd spent years pretending his son was just rough around the edges. As for Chase, I don't know where they moved him. Rumor had it he transferred to a private school outside the district. One with a strict code of conduct and mandatory parent evaluations. Fitting, I thought. Because now he would know what it felt like to be watched, judged, and given no room to hide. And Ethan? Ethan smiled more. He walked taller. He started drawing again, superhero comics, just like before. Only now, the hero didn't wear a cape. He wore glasses. And carried a sketchpad. He was quiet. But brave. And he knew his mom would always fight for him, quietly, smartly, and without mercy when needed. Because revenge isn't always about fire and fury. Sometimes, the coldest kind comes with policy, paperwork, and consequences. Life returned to normal, at least on the outside. Ethan went back to his routines, school, soccer practice, weekend sketchbook marathons. The bruises faded. The tension in his shoulders eased. But what stayed with him, and with me, was the knowledge that silence is never the solution. That no matter how quiet the world wants you to be, your voice can move mountains when it's backed by truth. A few weeks after Chase was expelled, I received an email from the district's Director of Policy and Conduct. It was short, but significant. We are revising our reporting protocol and parent engagement procedures based on recent events. If you're willing, we'd like to invite you to join our Parent Advisory Subcommittee. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. This was about every kid who ever got pushed down in the hallway and told to toughen up. Every parent who reported something and got nothing but a hollow email in return. Every principal who looked the other way to avoid tension at the next board meeting. I said yes to that advisory role. Not because I wanted influence, but because I knew what it felt like to be shut out. Over time, I helped train other parents on how to document bullying, advocate for their kids, and hold schools accountable without losing their minds or their jobs. And the nickname I overheard once at a PTA meeting? That mom with the binder. Good. Let them remember me that way. Let them remember the mother they didn't expect. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just relentless. I didn't take a bat to their doors. I took a flashlight to their shadows. And in the end, that's what scared them more. Because the system protects those who know how to work it, and I learned it better than they ever expected me to. So no, I didn't destroy Chase's life. I didn't scream or demand revenge. I just made sure my son and others like him never had to feel powerless again. And honestly, that's the coldest, cleanest kind of justice there is.